Hi everyone, it's me, Robin. Welcome back to my channel. My channel is about my 5 years away from my ex-husband, and I left an abusive marriage, and I'm leading up to getting up to how I've survived the last 5 years. But I just want to build up the story on how this all happened. So in my last videos, I talked about how we went bankrupt. I had to put my cat to sleep on my birthday, and my father died. And this was all in a 3-month period. Um, so, so watch my other videos to find out how that story started. I'm going to continue it now. So this is the day after my father died. My father died, and I went home, and I basically was up for like 35 hours, and I passed out. So I wake up the next day, and I could barely get out of bed. I'm so depressed. I'm so beaten. I'm broken. I could barely get my head out of bed. But I get up and I'm gonna get dressed and go to my mom's house, and thinking, we're gonna have a kumbaya moment, and we're gonna uh, plan my father's funeral, and it's just gonna be great. Well, um, couldn't be further from the truth what happened. So I get up and I get dressed and I get myself out the door, get to my mother's, and I see her carrying these heavy bags out the door. So I'm like, hey, mom, let me help you. I'll take those. So I lift them up and they're so heavy. And I said, Mom, what do you have in here? And she said, your father's clothes. Yeah. I was like, wait, what? He just died yesterday. And she's taking his things to Goodwill already. And okay. And I'm like, is it a little too soon? And she said, I need the closet space. So, okay. I personally thought that was a little cold. My father-in-law died. My mother-in-law was so distraught that I had to actually slip clothes out of his closets when she wasn't home. And so I guess just different perspectives and different feelings. And I just felt my mom was happy to have him gone. And okay, so I was a little surprised. So I got there and I'm like, are we going to be planning the funeral? And my mom and sister, oh no, we planned it all. We all planned it all like months ago. Like, wait, what? No one consulted me. No one asked me if I wanted to speak at my father's funeral. They didn't ask for any input from me. Oh yeah. So, and luckily, my parents lived across the street from a cemetery. Yes, in Stuart, Florida. They lived across the street from a cemetery that they bought plots on them 35 years ago when they first moved in there. So I thought that was great. So uh, my father was going to have a military ceremony for because my father served in Korea in the army, and uh, you know the next day was my father's funeral. And it was the oddest thing ever. Um, no one asked me or like nobody from my family to speak or anything, but my sister gets up and she proceeds to say, I'd like to tell you all I'm a minister from the Universal Life Ministry. And I just looked at my ex-husband and like wait, what? And my sister is not a Christian. She has always, uh, she actually has been, she was into witchcraft and paganry. And my mother and I were the Christians of the family. And my mother and I had that in common, that we had a kinship with our Christianity. And both of us believing in Jesus. And so when my sister got up to say Psalms 23, it was a complete shock to me. And also a little dagger in my heart, since it's my mother and I that felt we had that, religious Christian connection with each other. And my sister was never into Christianity. So that was a complete and utter shock to me. So then it was a lovely ceremony because it was a military ceremony, and military ceremonies are just so warm and special. And And when they gave my mother the flag, I burst out in tears. It made me so emotional. At the end, she did say if anyone would like to come up and say something, would they? So I wasn't included in this ceremony. I was like, hey, if you want to say something, go ahead, you know? And at this point, I was completely numb, but I did get up to say something. And I did say how much I adored my father and that I do hope that I helped heal his heart while I was here on earth and that I did bring him some sunshine and happiness from all the sadness he's had in his life. So I hope I was able to give him something of a decent life because he deserved it. He was hurt so badly as a child. And so I just hope that I was able to heal part of his heart and his soul. Okay, so I'm moving on. Okay, um, so we go to my mom's house afterwards, and we're going to have the meal, you know, sandwiches. And I hear my sister talking to my cousins, and my cousins, you know, ask, "Hey, what are you going to do after, you know, now that Uncle Joe is gone?" And I hear my sister pop up and say, "Hey, mom and I might move to Albuquerque." And I'm like, "Hey, what? Albuquerque? Oh, where she came from." So let me explain how my sister became part of their household. My sister moved to Albuquerque many years ago, and she actually bought a trailer. And so she was selling her trailer home, and I don't know who she sold it to, but what happened was that she accepted half a payment, let them move in, and they didn't pay her the other half. So she was swindled and she had nowhere to move. So my sister did what a lot of people unfortunately do with their parents. They lost their home and then they move in with their parents, their elderly parents, with the guys untaking care of mom and dad. So that's what happened. So Linda basically had no choice and she moved in with them by default to take care of them because she had nowhere to live. All right. And that happens. That happens to a lot of people. I mean, I was homeless too, so I get it. I was so I was homeless, so I understand. I may have had to move in with mom and dad too because I was bankrupt. So I understand. So my sister moves in, and she's constantly calling me, trying to find out what the backstory is for so many things because my sister had left the family 40 years earlier when she was 19, and she really never connected with the family again. She only came around when my parents gave her a check or an airplane ticket to visit us. So she kind of like left the family in a way. It was only me and my brother. And my brother is mentally challenged. So by default, I became the matriarch of the family. Not that I wanted to, but someone has to, you know, take the helm. And so she kind of went off on her own. So she was calling me constantly just to find out, hey, how did this get this way and this way and this way? And I would have to spend hours with her on the phone telling her the backstory. And so Linda came in and she took control of everything. And she got power of attorney. So she ruled everything. She convinced my mother to put the house on the market and that they were going to move to Albuquerque. So, you know, I can't control what my mother did. You know, you can't control what other people do. You can only control how you respond to it. So my mom can move anywhere she wants. That's fine. I did though. You know, I did hear my sister telling people this in secret, so I wouldn't hear any of this. Once again, when someone loses their power, they lose their when they lose their money, they lose their power. So it's just the way of life. Okay, it's a cold, hard fact, and that's the way it is. So then everybody goes home, and my dad is buried, and we cremated him, and he's in the vault and everything. And so the next day, I go to see how my mom's doing, and I asked her if she's moving and does she want to move, and you know, like what is the tell me what's going on here. And she said, I think I want to move with your sister. And we're thinking about Albuquerque. Okay, okay. You know what? That's okay. But I said, just for adjustment purposes. Now, my mom at the time was in her early 80s, and I said to her, I recommend it to wait about a year before you put your house on the market because you might have um, a hard time transitioning. Right now, everybody's here and everybody's talking and friendly, but when everybody goes home, then it will hit you that your husband of, by the way, 65 years, they had just celebrated their 65th wedding anniversary in, oh my God, I can't do this. No. Hi, everyone. It's me, Robin, again. Hi. Thank you for coming to my channel again. I appreciate it. I'm going to just continue from my last video about the story of what precipitated me leaving my husband and on my 5-year journey. So basically, at this point, my father had passed away. And the next day, I wake up and it was the day after, and getting out of bed was really very difficult, almost impossible. I was completely just traumatized, and I was in stun mode, like what just happened. So this is my father died, my cat died, and I lost my home. We were in bankruptcy. This all happened in a 3-month period. And I was basically a broken person. I thought I wouldn't survive all this. And all things do pass, but it was excruciating. I felt I had no life left. I had no purpose. My father was gone, and it was absolutely horrific. So I did get out of bed and I get myself dressed, and I'm gonna go to my mom's. And I thought what we would plan the funeral. I thought we were gonna have this kumbaya moment and plan this beautiful funeral for my dad. But I get there and everything's already planned. However, I see these 2 bags by the front door, and I said to my mom, "What's those?" She goes, "Oh, I just need them in the car." So I said, "I'll take them for you." So I carry these 2 large bags out to the car, and I said to her, "What's in these bags?" And she said, "Your father's clothes." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" She already cleaned out my dad's clothes the next day. I'm like, could you not have waited at least before the funeral? Well, I need the room. Okay, all right. But I just thought that's cold. That was really cold. I mean, when my father-in-law died, my mother-in-law was so attached to his clothing. After a year, I had to sneak things out to Goodwill. Yeah. So I thought that was like a little cold. All right, continuing. I want to plan the funeral. No, everything's done. Everything's been planned. I'm like, wait, what? Nobody consulted me. Nobody asked me. They didn't tell me what, nope, we just planned. We don't need to talk about it anymore. Yeah, it was done. Okay. So they told me, where to be, when to be, what time. And fortunately, when my parents moved to Florida many years ago, over 30 years ago, they moved across the street from a cemetery. How convenient it was. And it was a beautiful cemetery. So when they moved there, they immediately bought 2 plots. Beautiful place. And my father had a military funeral because he was in the army in Korea. And so it was going to be the next day there. And I asked, "Do you want me to say anything or do anything?" "No, everything's planned." "Right? No, good. Okay, all right. So just be dressed and show up at this time here tomorrow at the funeral." So I cannot tell you, I was still in a complete shock. My parents just celebrated their 65th wedding anniversary the day before, the month before. And I was still in shock. I was in like, yeah, I couldn't, I could barely think or feel. I was so numb, like my whole life falling apart all at once. And then the death of my dad. So then, okay, the next day is the funeral. And my sister gets up and she proceeds to tell everybody, I don't know if you all know this, but I am a minister of the Universal Life Church. And I look at my husband and I'm like, what is this? Are you are you kidding me? My sister basically thinks she's a minister and she's leading the ceremony, and it's so friggin' wacky. And what's even weirder is that she reads Psalm 23. I mean, I was not asked to participate at all. My sister's not a Christian. My sister is more into paganism, Wiccan, and uh, things like that. And it was a real little, it was a sore spot for me because my mother and I always shared Christianity in common. We both believe in Jesus and God, and we always had that in common together. We had Christ in common together, and my sister didn't believe any of that. So to have my sister read Psalm 23, and they didn't ask me to read anything, uh, that was very hurtful, very hurtful. And it was a lovely military ceremony. And I have to say, when they folded my father's flag and they gave it to my mother, I broke down in tears. It broke my heart. My father would have loved that. He would have loved the ceremony. Military funerals are so beautiful and respectful. So my sister did ask me, would you like anyone like to say any words? Well, of course, I want to say something because it would be my only chance. It would be my only chance to say something. So I did say how much I love my father, and I hope he's happy on the other side. And I hope that in his life, that somehow, some way, I was able to heal his heart and heal his soul from the pain he had from his childhood. My mother and father had to get married. They should not have been married. It was just a worst couple ever, constantly fighting, constantly bickering. And I mean, even when my father lay there dead, my mom was bickering with him, which was insane in my opinion, insane to anyone's opinion. And but it was just a very contentious marriage. It was they were always fighting, and it was very hard to watch for many years. So there was no love lost between the two of them. So the funeral's over. We go back across the street to my mom's house, and we were having, they're Italian, so there's a meal. That's what Italians do. We have my ex used to say, "Why do Italians have parties after funerals?" And I was like, "No, it's not a party. Most of the time, funeral masses are 2 hours, and we're starving. So, and it's a way of we commune that way. Italians connect through food. So, I'm Italian and Irish, so that's what we do." And so we're there at my mom's house, and my cousins are around and everything. And so I remember my one cousin saying, "Hey, what are you going to do after now that, Uncle so and so is dead and he's gone? What are your plans?" And I hear my sister say, "Mom and I are thinking about moving to Albuquerque, where she used to live." And I hear her trying to say it in secret, so I don't hear it because she doesn't want me to hear it. I mean, I could tell you right now, when you have money, you have power. I had no money, so I had no power, and I had no stay. And now let me tell you how my sister got to move in with my parents. So my sister had owned a trailer home for many years in Albuquerque, and she was working there for many years. And she sold it to someone, and she took half payment, and she let them move in without paying the other half. And they swindled her and never paid her. And then she was thus homeless. So she did what a lot of people in their 50s and 60s do. They move in with mom and dad, with the guys that were taking care of mom and dad, but they're basically homeless. All right. So I'm only knocking it because it's a lie. I mean, I could have been moving with my mom and dad too. Yeah, because I was broke and homeless. But I would have been honest. But she has to save face, and so she moved in with them and take care of them. And I'll give her credit, she did. And when she first moved in, she was on the phone with me all the time because she had left the family for like 40 years and needed to know the backstory about so many things. Why is this way? Why is it this way? Why is it that way? What happened here? So when my sister left the house, left our family, she's 8 years older than me and 7 years older than my brother. When she left the family, I kind of became the matriarch. My brother is mentally challenged. He has the brain of basically an eighth or a ninth grader. So I basically, by default, I became the matriarch. Not that I wanted to, but I had to look after my parents. And I did. So she moved in and she kind of like took over everything. Got power of attorney. She ruled the roost. I think she's the one who orchestrated my father going into hospice and not even trying to heal him. And so she's in control now of everything. That's great. So now I can't control what my mother does. No one can. You just, you you can't control what others do. You can only control how you react to it. So I actually thought in my mother's best interest, she should not move right away. She just became a widow after being married 65 years. So I suggested my mother, I'm sorry, I came back the next day because I had heard my sister talking about this, and I suggested to my mother, hey, why don't you just maybe wait a year because you're in great transition. You were with the same person for 65 years and in this house for 35. Why don't you just slow your roll a little and just wait a little? So my mother did decide to wait because I, of course, looked on Zillow every week to see if my mom's house was on the market. Well, it wasn't. And so I guess this gave them time to fix up the house and repair things that they needed to get done. But I did hear my sister was very upset at me because she wanted to put a down payment in a house in Albuquerque, but I ruined it because I suggested to my mom, wait. And she found this house that was next to her best friend's, and I kind of sabotaged that, suggesting to my mother, wait, because my sister was clearly manipulating her, and she bamboozled my mother to move. I think she convinced my mother that my ex and I was myself were evil and that we caused all these problems. She made me the scapegoat. But that doesn't matter. I'm glad she waited because I think when you're like 83 and you lose someone, you should take time to transition and heal a little. But in my mother's mind, I think she was happy he was gone. She had his dog, which my sister eventually killed anyway. But I think my mom was great, happy he was gone. And um, so I'm sorry. So I kept looking all year on Zillow to see if my mom's house was on the market. And you know what? To her credit, she listened to me and she did wait. So, but I think it was really not from my my suggestion of waiting. I think they bought time in fixing up the house so they could probably ask for a little more money. So, continuing, so a year goes by, and the day after the anniversary of my father's death, I see the house for sale on Zillow, and they were getting a good price on it. And I'm glad. I'm glad they got a great price on it. I mean, it was they did a lot of repairs. Money I gave them to repair the house at the time after a few hurricanes had done a lot of damage. Um, However, so they got a good price on it, I think. So I see it on the market, and I think about 3 weeks. No, I'm sorry, 3 months later, I see that they were under contract. So I kept looking, and I kept looking, and it said under contract, so I didn't see it kept popping up. So 3 months later, I called the house like my sister's cell phone. Hey, I'd love to come see you guys. Love to see mom, see how she's doing, after a year of dad's death anniversary. Maybe we should have a dinner together. And my sister said, well, we're not there anymore. I'm like, what do you mean you're not there anymore? Like, you're not in the house? No, we're not in Florida anymore. They moved out of the state without saying goodbye to me. Yeah, yeah, that's how cold they are. I didn't have a chance to hug my mother goodbye. Um, yeah, they were completely heartless. I was only a 40-minute drive away. They never invited me over. I never got to say goodbye to my mother before my sister dragged her out to Albuquerque. And I just think my sister saw me as a threat and wanted to make sure that I could not influence my mother anymore because I influenced her to wait to sell her house, and then it screwed up her plans. So she wanted to make sure that I was not around. She wanted to make sure that I could not influence my mom anymore because she saw that I already influenced her once. And she wanted to make sure that didn't happen again. So they left the state without me even a hug goodbye from my mother. So I have not physically seen my mother for about 6 years. And we did have a relationship up to a few months ago. And unfortunately, my mother cut me off and doesn't talk to me anymore. Yeah. So, that was the shock of my life that they, like, yeah, they left without saying goodbye. How could they be so cruel? And, that was so mean. I couldn't, I'm a parent myself. I have 2 children. I can't imagine I can't imagine doing that to my children. I can't. I just can't imagine, cutting off my children and not saying goodbye after leaving. When you're in the neighborhood. I'm still wounded from that, and I don't know if I'll ever heal from that because it was a complete shock and so heartless. But I do believe it came from my sister. I don't think it came from my mother, to be honest with you. And I've always wanted to stay in contact with my mother because I'm a mother, and I know what it's like to feel like a mother. Now, this is another thing. My sister's not a mother. She does not know the pain of a mother, the feelings of a mother. Yeah, she doesn't know that. So she doesn't know how much this hurt me. She doesn't know how to feel like a mother because she's not a mother. So, yeah, that was a really hard thing for me to go through. And at the same time, my marriage is falling apart. Yes, the same time, my marriage is not going well. I really starting to lose respect for my husband and love for him. And things are getting worse between us, and we're bickering and fighting. And I'm still numb, and I didn't know what happened to my life. But it was so devastating a year later that my mother stabbed me in the back, stabbed me in the heart, basically, and said, we're out of the state. We moved. Yeah, they already bought a house in Albuquerque, and we're settled in. Yeah, and I was the last one to know. I think that's pretty cold, personally. I would never do such a thing. But I survived it. Another thing I survived. So another getting down back up again because there's been so many, but I survived it because this too shall pass. And I've moved on. I moved on. And I will end it here. I will see you next time, and I want you to all have a great day. Don't let anyone tell you that you're crazy. If you feel you're in an abusive relationship, you could find the courage to leave like I did. And we will get to that after I finish the series about how this all happened and the precipitation of all that. And I want you to all feel strong, and I want you to feel that you are the author of your own story. You get to write what you want it to be. Find that courage, find that inner strength, and find that power. And I love you all, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.